All right. I am your moderator tonight. I'm Abby Longcore. Welcome to this forum. We'd like to welcome the candidates and the audience members to the primary election candidate forum for Assembly District 23. I'm today's moderator. As I mentioned, I'm with the League of Women Voters of Los Altos Mountain View, which is the host of today's event. We are presenting this forum on behalf of all the leagues in Santa Clara County. So in addition to our league, that includes Cupertino-Sunnyvale, Palo Alto, San Jose, Santa Clara, and Southwest Santa Clara Valley leagues. Let's start with a few housekeeping items here. So our forum will last 1 hour. Due to the nature of the webinar, we can't provide technical assistance to any attendees, but all forums will be recorded and available on our elections page within 2 days after each event. Our election page is located at lwvlamv.org. And it'll also be available on our YouTube channel as well. We'll be putting a link in the Q&A for people who need that. I will remain visible on your screen along with our candidates who will be popping up shortly, and the timer app. We have a digital timer app, and that app will show on the screen. Audience members are not shown. You can submit any questions you have about the event through the Q&A function. When it's answered, the answer will be visible to all the participants and all the attendees. Chat will not be turned on for this event. Questions for the candidates were submitted with registrations. We've combined similar questions to be able to cover as wide a range of topics as possible. And if time permits, the moderator will ask for additional questions from the audience. We will ask you to submit those questions through Q&A, and all questions should be suitable for all candidates. The League of Women Voters is a nonprofit organization of all genders that promotes informed, active participation in government. We do not support, oppose, or evaluate political candidates or parties, but after careful study, we do take positions on some issues, and the League invites anyone who's interested in supporting democracy and local government to join us. So now for today's forum, I'd like to tell you a little bit about this district and the office. So Assembly District 23 covers portions of coastal San Mateo County and the Santa Cruz Mountains, as well as the western cities of Santa Clara County. This is a really diverse district with fishing, tourism, and the heart of Silicon Valley tech industry. An assembly member serves a full 2-year term along with 79 others to form the lower house of the state legislature, and the top 2 candidates from the primary will advance to the general election in November. So our format today, each candidate will make a 1-minute opening statement, and then the questions were selected to be relevant to all candidates and to hopefully provide you all, the voters, with useful information about issues in this race. Depending on the question, all candidates will be given between 60 and 90 seconds to respond. And finally, the candidates will each have 1 minute at the end to make a closing statement. The electronic timer app that I referenced earlier, you should see it just popped up. That's going to be displaying the remaining time that everyone has for their questions, and it will randomly shuffle the order of candidates responding to each question. We ask our candidates to abide by the following. 1, time limits. When the timer line turns red, if you're still talking, I will say thank you. Please finish by completing your current sentence. 2, respect. Candidates will not interrupt each other. 3, fairness. Campaign marketing materials will not be visible on the candidate's screen. Everybody is using the LWV background, and that is to keep the focus on the candidates themselves and their answers. So now I would love to introduce to you the 4 candidates who are running for Assembly District 23. Candidates, please turn on your camera as you are introduced. I'm introducing people in alphabetical order. So first we have Mark Berman. There, I see Mark, wonderful. Next we have Lydia Kou. Perfect, thanks Lydia. And Allan Marson. And Gus Mattammal. Wonderful. Thank you all for participating. We're going to be addressing everyone tonight by their first names. And now we are ready to begin with opening statements. We'll look to our timer to tell us who is up first. And we'll start with Allan.
All right. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for this opportunity to speak. I've been a practicing business lawyer for 40 years, and I speak Chinese. I met my wife of 35 years ago when I worked in Taiwan, and we moved to Palo Alto in 2001 with our 2 sons. I decided to run for this office because of several anti-family bills passed by the California legislature. They're not reasonable. In last several elections, I organized volunteers for the Republican Party. During that time, I met many conservative voters who feel disenfranchised. I want to give them a voice in Sacramento. Finally, I have volunteered as a mentor to men out of prison and off the streets for the last 12 years and have seen what works with them to help them turn their lives around. So I'm Allan Marson, candidate for Assembly District 23.
Thank you, Allan. Next, we're going to go to Mark.
Thanks so much, Abby. I'm Assembly Member Mark Berman. I've had the privilege of representing the 23rd District, or before that, the 24th District, for the past 7 years in the California State Assembly. I also absolutely want to thank the League of Women Voters for bringing us together today, also for their advocacy for good democracy bills in the legislature. I've been proud to partner with them numerous times over the past couple of years, including a bill that I've introduced this year. I have been a leader in defending our democracy in California, especially at a time when democracy has been under attack. I authored the bill to make California a permanent vote-by-mail state. I had the first bill in the country to regulate the use of deepfake technology and artificial intelligence in elections back in 2019, a long time before other folks were thinking about it, and had a bill last year to integrate media literacy into our K-12 curriculum so the next generation is better equipped to deal with the massive amounts of misinformation and disinformation online. It's been a real privilege, and I look forward to earning your support.
Thank you. All right, and next we have Gus.
Hi, everyone. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for giving us this opportunity to speak to you tonight. I've come here tonight to ask for your vote, and in doing so, I bring 3 areas of experience to the table. First is government experience. I'm chair of our city council out on the coast side where I live. I also serve on countywide boards covering transportation and fiscal oversight. Second is business experience. I built a multi-million-dollar business here in Palo Alto in education, and I understand how hard it is and how difficult California has made it to both start and operate a small business here. And third is lived experience. I grew up in inner city St. Louis, one of the most violent parts of one of the most violent cities in America. I was the only kid on my block to graduate high school, let alone go to college. And that experience informs how I think about both politics and policy. We face a lot of big challenges here in California these days, and I have a lot of practical solutions to address them, and I'm really looking forward to talking to you tonight about them. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Gus. All right, Lydia.
Thank you for hosting us at this important event. I want to give a personal thanks to all of you for being informed voters. I'm Lydia Kou. I'm serving my 8th year as council member and was former mayor of the city of Palo Alto. I ran for council because I wanted to represent the people. I still do. Sacramento is broken. There needs to be more common sense, more focus on what matters, and a lot less on regurgitating propaganda, undermining communities, and reducing democracy. As council member, I champion deep, affordable housing, including housing for people with developmental disabilities. I was first to advocate for Palo Alto buying the Buena Vista mobile home park and not having it sold, its residents displaced, and their long-established community broken up. I have fought the expansion. I have fought state unfunded mandates to ensure people have a voice. I have championed the expansion and preservation of parks, open space, and the natural environment. I'm proud to have received Sierra Club's endorsement for both of my council campaigns. We need more common sense in Sacramento.
Thank you. All right, thank you so much. We are going to move to our first question. You'll see the timer reordering itself and resetting on your screen. So the first question, Mark is going to have the first answer for this. It's going to be 90 seconds to answer. And it says, the state is facing the potential of a multi-year budget deficit. What actions would you take to fix that?
It's a great question. And frankly, we've been taking actions for the past 8 years to prepare ourselves. We know that California's budget is remarkably cyclical. We know that California's revenue generating system is heavily reliant on income tax, which is very volatile. That's why during my time in the legislature, we have amassed the largest budget reserves in California's history, over $30 billion in budget reserves. And in a fiscal analysis that was done last year by Moody's Analytics, the credit rating agency. They identified California as the fourth most ready state in the country for an economic downturn. And that's because we were creating huge fiscal reserves. And that's because when we had budget surpluses, most of the money that we spent was going towards one-time projects. It was not going towards ongoing projects or ongoing programs that needed annual funding. So I think California is in a better place right now for an economic downturn than any time in the state's history. I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the fact that we've stayed disciplined and put money into reserves. That being said, we do need to look at, if we could hit the reset button on our tax system, I think that would be a good thing. I think that I fully support a split roll tax and treating commercial property, evaluating and reassessing commercial property on a more regular basis so that we can raise more money for the programs that are our priorities in California.
Thank you. All right, Gus.
For the question. Here's what our legislature had to work with. California has the 5th largest economy in the world. We have the 5th largest tax burden in America. And we have an economy that President Biden likes to remind us every chance he gets is not only good, but historically good. And with all that to work with, we're looking at a $68 billion deficit next year. So one question we have to think about as you think about who to vote for is, are these the folks you want managing your hard-earned tax dollars? Mm-hmm. Here's what I would do. I would say what we need to do is start instituting key performance metrics for all the programs we're spending money on, so we can track how much value our programs that we're spending all this money on are actually delivering. And then any program that fails to meet its targets, 3 out of any 5-year window, that would immediately trigger a 3-year sunset provision. So any program which is just not delivering the value that the taxpayers would want will get sunsetted over that 3-year window. And if it's such a great program, then 3 years from now, we can talk about reinstating it. But that would allow some kind of means of actually shutting down programs. You actually need someone who's willing to start shutting down some of the programs that aren't delivering value. And honestly, fiscal discipline is what you need Republicans for. I hate to say it that way, but in fact, that's what you do. You need Republicans for that. And I'm absolutely willing to go to Sacramento and start imposing some fiscal discipline so that we're not facing all these massive swings in our budgets year over year over year. I'm committed to doing that, so please vote Gus on March 5th. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, up next we have Lydia. Same question.
Thank you. Can you repeat the question, please, Abby?
Yes, I would be happy to. The state is facing the potential of a multi-year budget deficit. What actions would you take to fix it?
Thank you. For the most part, I agree with a lot of what Mr. Mattammal had said. There's a lot of programs that are subsidizing a lot of things. We have a lot of housing bills that are unfunded by the state, yet they're pushing the issues and also the funding to a lot of the cities. But a lot of the programs, we don't know whether they're working or not because the state is not tracking it and to see whether it's working out. So we do need a system where we need to monitor and to make sure that we are looking at programs that work and programs that don't, so we're not wasting money. The other part is we should also look at high-speed rail. Is that something that is absolutely necessary? Is it just a waste of money? It seems like it's a big hole going there. Then again, on our transportation agencies as well, there's 27 of them. Is there a way to streamline them and to make them less the administration costs that are so high? Perhaps we should be looking at those as well and to see how we can have them work a little bit better together. But really, I think we need to have a reset and some kind of manner of monitoring, tracking, and auditing how the state is using its money. Thank you.
Thank you. Allan.
Yes, thank you. Well, so I'm a small businessman, and my business is advising other small businessmen. And California, I think, is in trouble. Businesses are leaving. We're losing not only population, which is declining when other states are gaining population, we're losing tax returns, including the tax returns of wealthy individuals and retirees. So what we need to do, we certainly need to monitor how income is spent, make sure there's no waste, that sort of thing. but it's really a more fundamental problem. I've lived in China for many years under a socialist regime and also in other countries. The problem is we're overregulated and we're overtaxed. If we reduce taxes, reduce regulation, bring back market forces, they will generate income that pays for everything else. So I think the first step is we need to start looking at our tax structure. We need to start encouraging businesses. We need to reduce regulations instead of increasing them. The state has many regulations. The IRS just came out with a new one that basically criminalizes small businesses if they don't report accurately on who their ultimate beneficial owner is. Now, it's perfectly logical why they would want to do that for some shell companies, but for the average small businessman, they could be put in prison for failing to report a change in their license. This is crazy. This kind of rule should not apply to small businesses. Sorry, I'll stop there.
Oh, sorry. Thank you so much, Allan. Okay, with that, we are going to move on to our second question. All the questions from here on out are 60-second answers. So our timer will be reset to reflect that 1 minute everyone will have to answer. And the next question, which will be going first to Lydia, is Prop 1 redistributes existing funding for mental health and addiction. It also includes a bond to fund treatment facilities and housing for the homeless with a focus on veterans. Do you support or oppose, and why?
At this point, I'm not supporting because it came to the ballot. It came forward too quickly. There was really very little discussion with the mental health professionals and also a lot of the smaller caregivers that are providing mental health. And I think that there needs to be further discussion with those groups in order to bring something like this forward. In addition, this tax was voted in by the voters specifically for mental health care. And now to be taking away from Peter to pay Paul, to do something with Paul, to pay Paul, is just not the right thing until we have better understanding of what it may do to the current programs that are in place. So no. I would love to see it come back after it's further discussed with the mental health community, perhaps in the November ballot, but this is way too quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mark.
Thanks, Abby. I do support Prop 1, but I don't think that is all that we need to do. In California, and especially in the Bay Area, we have a desperate need for more mental health infrastructure, especially for more beds for people who are suffering from significant mental health breaks. I've heard from too many constituents who have had their loved ones have to go far away, and how disruptive that is for them as a family unit, and how hard that is for their loved ones to get the care that they need. But I'm also sympathetic to the concerns around taking money away from certain programs to help those who are suffering the most acute mental health breaks in our society. And so I think that we need to increase funding for those programs as well. But Prop 1 is sort of the second step of care courts that we've created to be able to create a system where folks many of whom are living on our streets are suffering the most. And it's not compassionate to leave those folks there. We need to get those folks the help that they need. And I think care courts plus Prop 1 is a good start to doing that.
Thank you. Gus.
Thank you. There are obviously not a whole lot of things that I agree with Governor Newsom on, but I think the care courts are actually a good step. Lydia is actually correct about the way the Prop 1 shifts money away from treatment. I think that's actually a serious weakness in this proposal. That said, the fact that it does invest in building long-term care facilities, that's something that we desperately need in California. And so while I don't love this bill, I actually think I would think I am going to vote for it on the grounds that half a loaf is better than no loaf. And if I'm in the assembly, I want to go back and fix the things about this that I think are not correct, including shifting money away from treatment. That part is not good. But the investment in the long-term care facilities is, because that's something we haven't had in California in a long time. And as we can see from just walking down the streets in San Francisco, it's something that we absolutely need to be investing in. So overall, I'll vote for it, even though it's not by any stretch a perfect bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Allan.
Yes. So Prop 1 I certainly agree. You know, I volunteer in a long-term recovery facility for people with substance abuse, and I spent over 1,000 hours, maybe 2,000 hours, talking on one-on-one with those guys. We definitely need more help, but I think we need to be careful how we help. The organization I work for takes no state money, for example, and yet it has 50 men who go through, and they have a high rate of recovery, and they also feed many homeless people at the same time, all without any state funding. Now, I'm not advocating that, you know, cutting off state funding, but what I am saying is we need to look at what's being done, because there's a lot of things that don't work. Key example, it doesn't work to take people on the street like that and put them into houses without first breaking off their connections. I mean, they live in a culture on the street. They're part of it, and that culture is all about using. And when you move them into houses, you're just simply
Thank
moving the
you.
culture into the houses. Sorry. Okay.
It's okay. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Next question. So all cities have state, and this will go first to Gus, our timer just reset. So all cities have state set targets for housing units to be built by 2031. Why is it so hard to build enough housing, and what would you change? Gus.
Awesome. Thank you. Love this question. It's worth always taking a step back and asking, why do we have a housing crisis in the first place? And the answer is because our legislature made it so hard and so expensive to actually build any housing anywhere. Having created that problem, now trying to solve that problem in the most Sacramento way possible, which is to just start forcing housing absolutely everywhere, whether anybody wants it or not. These RHNA numbers that they create come out of some black box in Sacramento. They make no sense. They're designed to be almost impossible to manage to. And then if you don't hit them, they invoke builder's remedy, which now allows developers to build wherever they want, whether anybody likes it or not. This is a terrible way to approach this problem. I would do two things. Within the district, I would say along transit corridors, yes, we can do expedited development, but only on the transit corridors, not in our neighborhoods. And then in the interior of the state, I would create a housing opportunity area, no zoning, which will allow housing to be built much more cheaply and allow people, younger people, families trying to get started, an actual opportunity for home ownership.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Allan, same question.
Yes, well, I pretty much agree. I would say, though, that the building in the corridors, actually, I live in one. I live in the El Camino corridor, and that traffic there is becoming very difficult. I don't think it's helpful to put high-rise apartments in there without adequate parking, which is allowed under builder's remedy. I lived in Taipei when they had a similar situation. They suddenly had a lot of people with cars, and they had to go back and fill in the infrastructure, put the low-grade roads. It tied everything up for 5 years. You could walk faster than you could drive. So I think we need to think about that. Let's open areas around the perimeters of the Bay Area. We have lots of space. We can keep some reserves, but open areas, put single family houses out there. I mean, isn't that the American dream? When immigrants come here, isn't that what they want? You know, I've lived in a couple of very heavily populated cities, including New York, Beijing, and Taipei. And especially in the Asia, I mean, everybody's dream is to have a car and to have a place of their own.
Thank you. All right, next up we have Mark. Same question.
Thank you. We've done an amazing job in Silicon Valley of creating jobs over the past 30 or 40 years, remarkably successful. We've done a terrible job in Silicon Valley, in the Bay Area, and across the state of creating the housing necessary to meet the demand of those jobs. And that's a failure on practically every community for the past 40 years. And so I know that everybody is frustrated at the need, at the homelessness crisis that we have. I know so many people who are struggling every day under the unaffordability crisis that we're having in our communities, and so many Californians who are rent burdened, paying far more than 30% of their income on rent. So that's why we're at the place where we are now, where we need to build more housing. And I'm proud to have been a supporter of efforts to create a system that allows for housing to be built cheaper and for housing to be built faster. And anybody, you know, it's all you have to do is walk down the street. All you have to do is talk to a neighbor to know how much people are struggling under the lack of housing we have.
Thank you. All right. And Lydia, same question.
Thank you. So the thing is, we have a affordability housing crisis, not a housing crisis. And jobs are leaving California. And so the RENA numbers that has been allocated to all the cities are hugely inflated because of a methodology that is wrong. I would say that in addition to all of the affordability factor, a lot of the state housing mandates that are coming from the state do not give funding to the cities or the counties in order to build affordable housing. And with affordable housing that is, whether it's affordable or market rate, the unit costs $700 to $1 million to build, and that is just not sustainable. Furthermore, I do want to say that a lot of the affordable units, the truly affordable units, actually revert back to market rate. So we're always losing them because developers take it back after a certain number of years. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next question. And it looks like our timer has just reset, and Lydia will be up first for this question. So the question is, renters in California are hurting. Over 10% are in arrears. What would you do to help renters?
Well, I would really like to see that we have more housing vouchers at that there's more funding for that from Congress and from national government, so that we can help renters in order to stay within their units. But right now we do have a state rent control law, but I do think that each city should look at what their costs are in order to help their renters. Because each city is different, each city is unique, and then also the cost of living in different cities, in different regions are also different. But I do want to see much more housing vouchers that will come forward in order to help renters.
Thank you. All right, and next, Allan.
Yeah, well, so that is a challenge. I think one issue is we have to be very careful about housing vouchers or below market housing. If it eventually reverts to market, that's one thing. But if it stays below market, we essentially create a gray market in housing, subletting, illegal subletting and graft. I saw that both in New York City and especially in Beijing and Taipei. So, or Beijing actually. What we need to do is harness market forces to build more housing. I mean, at the end of the day, more housing stock brings prices down. We can open up land, open up development, let people, if there's housing, there will be units that become available. In terms of the high cost, the prices will drop temporarily. Vouchers, some kind of help is useful, but there has to be a long-term plan to increase building stock.
Thank you. All right, Mark.
Thanks, Abby, and I'm pleasantly surprised to say I agree with Allan. This is a very, very simple supply and demand analysis, and if you build more supply, then demand will go down and prices will moderate or go down. We've seen this in other cities across the country where they built more housing and the cost of housing went down or stabilized. It stopped going up as much as it was. And so that's really the crux of the answer for supporting our residents, our friends, our neighbors that are struggling every day under the insane cost of living, is that we need to find more ways to build more housing. And that needs to be collaboration between the state and local governments. And was pleasantly surprised to see Mountain View, which is actually the biggest city in the 23rd Assembly District, be designated as a pro-housing community by the state of California for things that they're doing at the local level to create a regulatory scheme that makes it easier to build housing. And I encourage all cities in the 23rd Assembly District to follow Mountain View's lead on that.
Thank you. All right, Gus, same question.
Thank you. I also agree that it is fundamentally a supply-demand problem. The issue is actually on the demand side, in that we've allowed our economy to become so concentrated in just a couple areas that every 23-year-old with a computer science degree feels like they have to live either in San Francisco or Mountain View in order to be able to work. So when I talk about the housing opportunity area, developing the interior, what state government should be doing is, in addition to just helping with the infrastructure of doing that, is also creating incentives for companies to move some of the jobs out there. Let's diversify our economy geographically within California a little bit more. And that will allow people to spread themselves out a little bit. And that takes some of the demand pressure off the supply that we have. You can't actually build your way out of the demand, because I moved from the Upper East Side of Manhattan, and all my liberal friends over in Manhattan say housing's unaffordable. We need more housing here. If Manhattan level density doesn't solve your problem, then it's actually not a problem you can build your way out of. So it's partly diversifying our economy geographically and then developing the interior of the state. That'll take the pressure off. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are going to go to our next question. And we are going to start with Allan first. The question is, your geographically diverse district will be heavily impacted by sea level rise and its consequences. What can the legislature do, and what actions would you take if elected? Allan, you're up first.
Okay, thank you. Well, certainly, I mean, sea levels are probably going to rise, and the first obvious thing to do is to control building along the coast so that you don't have people building where there's going to be an increased risk of flooding. But there's a more fundamental question here about whether we're really at risk from our environment. I think in the long term, there's going to be changes. There's some warming, but there are other factors going on, and I don't see any kind of catastrophic change. So in terms of sea level rising, I think that's really the key thing that would need to be done. Obviously, if you lived in the Netherlands or Bangladesh or someplace like that, it would be more urgent, where you're already under sea level. I would look at the comparison between China and the U.S. actually, in terms of what's happening with carbon dioxide and pollution. Oh, sorry, I'm out of time.
Thank you. No, thank you so much. All right, next, Mark.
These are tough questions to ask or answer in 60 seconds. But sea level rise is dramatically impacting the 23rd Assembly District, both on the bay side and on the coast side, especially with the 40 miles of California coast in San Mateo County. The first bill I ever introduced back in 2017 was to extend the Preparing for Sea Level Rise database that had been created by my predecessor, Assemblymember Rich Gordon, to help local municipalities identify best practices and share best practices. I also authored a new law to allow for municipalities to use enhanced infrastructure financing districts, EIFDs, to be able to raise funds for projects needed to combat the impact of sea level rise. And the first project I ever brought money back to the district for was a little over $4 million to help with the Butano Creek Marsh Flood Protection Program in Pescadero, which has been dramatically impacted by flooding due to multiple factors, including sea level rise. So we need to do a lot more to help our communities that are at risk.
Thank you. All right, and next, Lydia, same question.
Thank you. Sea level rise, science says sea level rise is actually happening. And it has a huge impact on coast side as well as on the bay side, and each experience it a little bit differently. I know that along the bay, there has been levees that are being built. I think that the state should be actually looking at infrastructure and helping out with the funding and making sure that it is built, and also to investigate and to encourage more natural ways of reducing floods along the bay side. Now on the coast side, it's a completely different thing, where it is really being battered badly. And there are solutions. We have to kind of make sure that there is funding to look at, and creating sea walls as well as armoring, and fund it fully. Thank you.
Thank you. Gus.
Thank you. So I live in El Granada on the coast, so I see it every day, what's happening. In California, the attitude in our legislature and in the Coastal Commission has been one of managed retreat. So just pulling back regardless. My attitude is strategic resistance. We have to pick our spots, and we have to fight for the areas that it makes sense to fight for. We can't save everything, but we can save some things. So that's going to be the attitude that I bring on this issue with sea level rise. We also obviously have to be, managing to climate change. The climate is changing. How we do that actually really matters, though. So I think it's important that we focus on incentives. We focus on technology. We're going to science our way out of this. There's already too much carbon in the air. We got to invest in carbon removal so that we can pull it out of the air. That gives us runway to get to things like fusion power that offers limitless clean energy. That is just going to help slow down the sea level rise and give us, again, time to do the investing in infrastructure and pick our spots with strategic resistance. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. While our timer resets, we are going to move to the next question. It will go to Mark first. So this question is actually about education. So California ranks 33rd among the states in funding for education. Do you support more education funding? If so, what practical ideas do you have for increasing funding? And if not, why not?
I definitely support more funding for education. I tell folks when I joined in the assembly, our funding for education was terrible. Now it's okay, but we haven't gotten to good yet. And our students, our 6 million students in California, that's what they deserve, especially the students in the lowest socioeconomically or the highest socioeconomically disadvantaged communities. And I mentioned earlier, but a split roll of Prop 13 is one way to raise billions of dollars more for K through 12 education, where right now Chevron and Disney and multi-billion-dollar, trillion-dollar corporations are getting a tax break of $1 billion a year because their property that they have massive amounts of is assessed at 1978 levels plus a couple of percent, plus 1% a year. So if we were to assess corporate property on a more regular basis, that would generate billions of dollars that we could invest in our youth, invest in their future, and create a stronger California for everybody.
Thank you. Gus.
Thank you. Love this question. Education is my business. It's a passion issue for me. If anybody thinks that the only issue with education is on the funding side, then you should be mad as hell as our current legislature, because there's been a supermajority there for 8 years, which means you can pass anything you want, anytime you want. So I think it's not just a funding issue. But since we're talking about funding, one thing I would do is I would create a pilot program, which would target schools, a selection of schools in the bottom 10% of performing school districts. And it would create a fund that would allow every teacher to designate 1 or 2 students in his or her classroom as in-class tutors. And it would pay those students federal minimum wage for that time. So it would reward students who are doing well in school and underperforming schools, and it would allow teachers to offload some of what they need to do onto those students so that they can focus on kind of the big middle in their classrooms. That would do more for equity and for investing in our classrooms than anything that's come out of the legislature in the last 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Lydia.
So as we know, the different areas, different districts have a lot of disparities, and one of the coastside schools actually are in need a lot of funding. When we look at schools in Saratoga, they have 89% of the kids that pass math, but in Half Moon Bay, there's only about 20% that passes. And why is that? So it's mostly got to do with funding and the population over there. So I think that we have to kind of even out how each of the cities get their funding, look at the population, and then provide that extra funding. But also, I do believe that extra funding needs to go towards the lower grades, just to ensure that they have that extra boost, and recognize that we do have kids that need more help, more tutoring, and then there are others that are in the gifted realm. So provide for both. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Allan, same question.
Well, thank you. I think what we need to look at is, in spite of the billions being spent, California is not performing well. I mean, the more money that's put in doesn't seem to make a difference. It has the lowest high school graduation rate in the country, according to the U.S. Career Institute. Costs are high, but on average, students' reading and math scores are low. Yet children are promoted to higher grades anyway and graduate without the skills they need. California is not academically rigorous by international standards. What we need to do is start looking at how the money is spent. We do not need to spend money on social engineering. We need to focus more on STEM classes and on, what do you call it? Technical schools. There's a lot of kids. I work with some of the men I work with are going through HVAC or electrical school. We need a lot more of that kind of people. We need to focus on those classes and see that they're funded. We can also pay teachers to teach children after schools, like the Bushiban system in Taiwan.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Allan. All right. Next question, we will be starting with Allan. No, just kidding. Gus. All right. Gus, this will be to you. So how will you keep in touch with your constituents' wants and needs in this large and very diverse district?
I love that question. I've been for months now going just door to door, canvassing, talking to voters, asking them what's on your mind. What would you want me to work on in Sacramento? Over and over again, I hear homelessness, I hear crime, I hear education. I think it's about making sure that you're talking to just regular people about what's on their minds. So I think the first thing that happens when you get elected to a position like this is immediately you get swarmed by lobbyists, the people who are there to advocate for their special interests. That's how Sacramento works. That's the dynamic. And if you just allow that to happen and you lose all contact with regular people, then you lose touch with what's actually on regular people's minds. So I love that we are, the Bay Area is close enough. You get back and forth really easily. I plan to come back and forth a lot and just continue going door to door and talking to people even after the election is over. I just want to make sure I never, ever lose contact with the wants and concerns of just regular everyday folks who don't have expensive lobbyists to advocate for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark, same question.
I love the question. When you get elected, you hire a staff. You hire a staff in Sacramento in your capital office, and you hire a staff in your district office. And I told my entire team that they're all equally important. Passing legislation in Sacramento is important, and constituent services and helping constituents when they need help interfacing with state agencies is equally, and sometimes, as it was during the COVID pandemic, much more important than what happens in Sacramento. So the other day, I had the opportunity to speak to a neighborhood group in West San Jose. And an hour later, I was in Pacifica for a community meeting that both Lydia and Gus were at. That's 45 miles from end to end of the district. And that's the fun part. The fun part is how diverse the district is. The fun part is community coffees. The fun part is health fairs. The fun part is going to neighborhood associations and engaging with people. And a lot of bills, frankly, have come out of those meetings for me. I've had a lot of bills come out of the community coffees that I do in every community, every term that I've served.
Thank you. All right, Allan, same question.
Well, I think I agree with Gus on this one. I think it's important to keep in touch with your constituents. It's easy to, I'm sure it's easy to get caught up with special interests, with the lobbyists, and lose touch. Now, I do a lot of volunteer work. I work one-on-one with people all the time. I'm very familiar with how to do that and how to get to what people are really concerned about it and put it down in a workable way. So I also speak a couple of languages. Chinese, I can understand French and Spanish, so I can talk to the constituents in their own language if necessary. But that's the important thing. I think it's crucial not to get so caught up that you don't actually hear what people are saying. The other day I talked to our housekeeper, and she's got a tremendous story, and she's got interests, things that need to be done for her. Another thing that happened the other day, talked to a young man from Zambia who was caught in a legal tangle. He couldn't get his car, and he couldn't prove he owned it until he got his car.
Thank you.
Sorry, finished.
No, you're doing great. Thank you so much. All right, and next up, Lydia, same question.
Thank you. I always want to keep in touch with my community, with the constituents, and they can always reach me. I realized that there might be staff members once you get into the office, but what I see is for many of the legislators, they're more like gatekeepers than anything else. And so I want to be available when somebody calls me. I want to be able to pick up the phone and return the calls. I will go to them and I will be present and reachable. And I have really admired County Supervisor Joe Simidian's methods of going into the community, attending, having sidewalk hours at different public events, at the farmers market or wherever else. And I would like to institute that. As a matter of fact, I've started working on my calendar for that, just to make sure that I am able to get to all the cities within District 23. So I will be present. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. It looks like our timer has reset. So this next question will go first to Allan. And the question is, ask and answer a question you wish we had asked you.
Okay. So I guess I wish you had asked me why I'm running. And I think the answer to that is, I said, I think at the beginning, I'm very concerned about the anti-family bills. There's a lot of mama bears and increasingly papa bears who are standing up, who are really angry about what has been done with this legislation and also at the local level. But what I think disturbs me even more is what I saw in the legislature. I've gone to testify before committees. Just give you one example. I had a group of mothers who had these terrible books. They were very concerned about their children. They sat in the committee meeting, and the committee members had such disrespect for them. They were playing Jeopardy among themselves as these mothers were there. Okay, trivial thing, but they're very concerned. I think we need to have a legislature, members of the legislature who show their concern, who pay attention to what their constituents are doing and respect them.
Thank you. All right, Lydia.
I wish you would have asked me about Proposition 19, to fix Proposition 19. Proposition 19 had a really good intention of helping people who were who lost their homes in a fire so that they can roll over 3 times, taking their tax base with them at the lower tax base. But what Proposition 19 did a few years, 2 years ago, is that it also embedded in the language was to not allow inheritance from one family member to their children, or even from grandparents to their children, without the property being reassessed at fair market value. And a lot of the children are not able to remain, even though they had lived at the home, but because there's a transfer of title, now the taxes have gone up, and that causes people to lose their homes and potentially have difficulty finding another place. So
Thank
I
you.
wish I was asked that. Thank you.
All right. Gus, same question.
Question: what is the greatest irony in California politics? Answer: that the moderate left, the center left, would have more power and influence over the direction of California if Republicans had more power and influence over the direction of California. Let me explain what I mean by that. If you're a center-left politician, normally you would experience 2 forces. One is Republicans, 3 Republicans trying to pull you a little bit further to the right, and then a far left trying to pull you a little bit more to the left. Zero out Republicans as a political force. Now the only force on you is the one dragging you further and further left. That's where we are in California. Now, the only way to fix that dynamic is to restore Republicans as a counterweight. Now, it's my party's responsibility to offer you practical, approachable, solutions-oriented candidates that you could feel comfortable voting for. But guess what? Great news. Here I am. Practical, approachable, solutions-oriented. So vote Gus on March 5th, and that's the first step toward bringing that balance back to our state politics. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark.
I had the same question as Allan. Why do you want to serve? And I originally ran for office, and I continue to run for re-election to help the people that are struggling the most in our communities. We have remarkable inequities and inequalities in our communities, in every city, in the 23rd Assembly District, in our backyard. And that helping people that are struggling the most has been my biggest priority. That's why I just had a groundbreaking for $8 million for affordable housing in East Palo Alto. That's why I brought $2.5 million back for farm worker housing in Half Moon Bay. That's why I've introduced legislation to help student parents at our UCs, CSUs, and community college levels. That's why I've focused so much on helping students transfer from community college to the four-year institutions, helping young people, helping people that are working their tails off but can't afford to pay rent. That's why I support the bills that I support to build more housing. And I know that's led to some folks being frustrated with me in some communities, but that's my North Star, and that's what I'm going to continue to do. Thanks, Abby. Sorry to go long.
Thank you. That's okay. No worries. You guys have all been doing a super awesome job. And our timer has been doing a wonderful job as well. So thank you for that. And with that, we are going to switch to closing statements. So everyone will have 60 seconds for their closing statement, and we will start with Lydia.
Thank you. My campaign is simple. It is about change. Sacramento has run up a $68 billion deficit, a bill we will all pay with higher taxes and fewer services. Why? Because Sacramento listens to the insiders, the special interests, and their donors, but not to us, the constituents, the voters, taxpayers. If I'm elected, it will be because of you, and I will be present in your communities to learn, to listen, and to represent you in Sacramento. We need better policies on homelessness. They spend billions and we see no real progress. We need to be smarter about crime, starting with reforming Proposition 47 so that retail theft isn't essentially decriminalized. And we need to have the right to speak out about what happens in our own neighborhoods. That's called democracy, and we need to bring it back. We need change, but first, changing the status quo that isn't delivering for our community starts with changing the culture of sending the same people to Sacramento again and again.
Thank
Vote
you.
for Lydia Kou, lydiakou.com. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Gus, closing statement.
Thank you. First, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this event tonight, and to my fellow candidates for all appearing here. I stand before you tonight as the endorsed candidate of the Republican Party, but I didn't come here to ask you to change your political identity. I didn't come here to ask you to change your policy preferences. I'm asking you tonight to invest one vote in my vision of a California where politics and policy reflects not just one perspective, but perspective of Democrats and Republicans, and frankly, the many people who've gotten so fed up with the way our politics has gone that they've either gone third party or just abandoned politics altogether. I firmly believe Democrats, Republicans, and independents can all be partners in bringing the change that, if you listen to everything that's happened tonight, it's clear that our state desperately needs. So vote Gus for a better way forward on the issues. Vote Gus for practical solutions to the problems we face. Vote Gus for us. Thank you so much, everyone. Appreciate having the opportunity.
Thanks, Gus. All right, Mark.
Thank you, Abby. A great job moderating today's forum. Thanks to the League of Women Voters for bringing us all together. And again, for the activism that you do year round to make sure that our communities are better educated around the important issues that impact them. It's been an honor serving in the state assembly for 7 years, going on 8 years now. It's been an honor leading efforts to defend our democracy. It's been an honor leading on combating climate change. I'm honored to have the support of the Sierra Club. I'm honored to have the support of the California Democratic Party. I'm honored to have the support of Governor Gavin Newsom, even though we don't agree on everything that we do. There is so much more work to be done. I'm proud of the efforts that I've done to expand access to the ballot, to expand media literacy in schools, to expand attaining the higher education dreams that a lot of our young people are trying to accomplish, protecting consumers. But there's more to be done, and that's why I'm respectfully asking for your support in March.
Thank you. And Allan, closing statement.
Thank you. Well, I'd also like to thank the League of Women Voters for this chance to speak and to speak with the other candidates. What I want to mention as a closing statement is that I'm pro-human and pro-abundance. I think so often today we use excuses like, the climate or whatever to basically limit ourselves. We need to grow and to prosper again. We need to create opportunities and living space for all of us, for our children, for our families. I will work for a vibrant, prosperous, and safe California with a world-class economy, for strong and healthy families, and a responsive state government. I'll support good schools focused on the basics, not on social engineering, hiding gender choices from children, and that sort of thing. I'll also protect property rights and work for low and fair taxes, which are essential to growth. Also work for sound government, for election integrity, and for freedom from corruption. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I would just really like to thank all of the candidates for coming out tonight, for participating, for sharing your views with our audience. Big thank you to all the volunteers behind the scenes who made this forum possible. The League of Women Voters believes that a democratic government depends upon the informed and active participation of its citizens. And we hope that the insights you've gained tonight in this forum will help you in planning your vote. To look at personalized ballot information about the candidates and ballot initiatives, please visit vote411.org. After you receive your ballot, to see profiles of these candidates and other offices that are on the ballot, and as well as some answers to questions posed by the League. When this forum closes, our webpage will appear. Please visit our webpage to see our other election events and links to recordings of the events that have already happened. For the March 5th presidential primary election, please vote early, deposit your signed ballot in a ballot drop box or mailbox as soon as possible. And thank you for helping to make our democracy work. So big thank you to all the candidates again for participating. It's been lovely talking with you this evening, and
Thank you.
I wish you all well.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.